Hello everyone and welcome back to the Roker Rapport. This is episode 26 and you're joining us the day after the Burnley match. I mean, it might not be the day after when you listen to it, but yeah, it's forever going to be after the Burnley match. It's post-Burnley. Now, we didn't lose this match and a lot of people are upset regardless. Me personally, considering we did the best of the immediate relegation rivals out of the weekend, we got a point, so that's one thing. But yeah, a lot of people still aren't happy because the way we didn't play. But yeah, before I go too deeply into that, I'm joined once again by James. How you doing, James?
I'm alright, mate. Alright.
James is good regardless. Callum, how you doing, buddy?
I'm alright. I'm alright, Demo, yeah.
Not too bad. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm good.
Sweet. Good times. Well, let me start with James then. How did you feel about the Burnley game, mate? What are your opinions? What are your thoughts?
I was a bit annoyed, really, because let's be honest, the point's no good. We needed a win and we didn't win. It was a decent enough performance overall. I mean, we were fairly solid defensively, and on another day, we probably could have won if it wasn't for some terrible finishing. I mean, Jones misses a absolute sitter, and it's just typical that none of the chances seem to fall to the foe. Great save by Pickers late on. Really could have. It's kind of saved a few blushes, I think. First half, it was so dull. The first half. I mean, other than a pot shot, half-assed attempt by Gibson out from outside the box, there was nothing to really speak about. We were much better in the second, but it was a bit too little, too late, and it kind of sums up Moyes' tenure in a way where we have played decently in spells, but we're just unable to perform for more than just spells in games. The decision not to play Didier Ndong is absolutely baffling to me. Even now, I mean, how you can leave out our most effective and energetic midfielder is just simply horrendous. And I think that was one of the main reasons why it's cost us 2 points. His energy when he came on pushed us upfield. And it's just, we're used to this. It's the hope that kills you, isn't it? With the hope being founded on possibilities. But under Moyes, it just seems to have changed. We're realistic. We don't expect too much, do we? But we want to go to the match hoping of a bit of entertainment and a team that we can be proud of. And at the present moment, I don't think we have either. We're bottom of the league. We're a team who seem incapable of improving. A manager who doesn't appear to be able to impact a game positively at all. And it's just kind of sucked the joy out of supporting Sunderland at the moment. Yes, the club's in massive...
Sorry to cut you off. Something you said there about expecting a bit of joy, a bit of excitement from the game. Do you feel that's something that we can rightly expect at this stage? Do you think that's a bit too much to ask for, maybe? Or should we be happy that we got a point?
No, because as football fans, we want to be entertained and we want to have a team we're proud of. And I genuinely we don't think we have either. We've got a bit of entertainment in the second half, but that first half was dire. I mean, let's be honest. Yes, the club's got massive debt, and this does dictate his signings. And yes, he's had some rotten luck with injuries, but I think just the way that he's managed the resources at his disposal has just been so poor. His stubbornness. Yeah, it's stubbornness with selection and reluctance to sign players who he doesn't know or who are from outside the UK is going to send us down. He's not 100% to blame here. The owner has a duty of care to the club and he's probably neglected that. But as I've previously said, he just hasn't done well enough with the resources at his disposal. I mean, the apathy around the club is dangerous, in my opinion. You can just feel it. It's everywhere. The acceptance of relegation. That's just not good enough. Why should we accept relegation? Yes, we have to stick by a manager. Yes, and we all know we need to rebuild, but I just can't see David Moyes being that manager, and I can't see him being the one who's going to turn this round. A point wasn't the worst result in the world by any stretch, but it's the fact that, he waited until 70 odd minutes to bring Didier Ndong on. Kazri got a little bit longer than he usually would, and he looked okay. I mean, he just looks completely shot as a footballer, and that's just another example of poor man management from the manager, in my opinion.
So, do you think it's fair to say that that he perhaps came into this job expecting, as we've previously speculated, that he came into this job expecting relegation, and as opposed to preparing some sort of defence as his predecessors did, he's buying for the future, as it were. I mean, that's certainly it's a suspicion of mine.
Yeah. I'm sick of his excuses. I think he made massive mistakes at the start with being so negative, and at times he's may have tried to be a bit more positive. But I just think his signings have been dire. The injury record's an interesting one, because speaking to a few of my mates, surely there's got to be some underlying factor here. You know, it can't just be bad luck. You know, to me anyway, it can't just be all bad luck. There must be something they're doing in training which is different.
Yeah,
well, we can touch more on Moyes a little bit later on, and indeed we will. We have to. I think we all really need to. We've got that pen out. But more on the Burnley game though specifically. Callum, what did you make of it, buddy?
It was a very dour, disappointing game. I mean, I think the result was probably fair. I think both teams missed chances. It was very scrappy. Burnley didn't really let us play. They were clearly quite happy to take the draw, because given their position, they know they've got a run of a few home games coming up, and they can take a point into their home games and look to win those. And so really you could tell in the last 10 minutes that they weren't really interested in necessarily going out to win it. And from what Moyes said at the end of the game, you would have thought that what we'd seen was a team that had really gone all out to win it, and saved the last sort of 15 minutes where Ndong and Khazri come on, and we get a little bit of energy, a little bit of purpose. It was very stop-start. A few chances, a couple of really good chances, but individual errors, poor finishing, and Burnley know that if you isolate Defoe and you don't give him a chance, you're probably at least going to get a draw from the game, because we don't score unless Defoe scores, or at least Defoe's involved. And Defoe was heavily marked during that game, and the results are there to see. I mean, there were a few positives. I thought Rodwell did quite well on his return to the side. He didn't have a bad game. I thought he looked quite tidy. He had a bit of bite about him. He seemed to sort of want to get stuck in. But again, I think Oviedo had a bit of a shocker. Denea was really poor. He doesn't seem to read the game particularly well, and he doesn't seem to have the height or the spring for a good centre-back to sort of jump and win the ball, and Gray gave him the runaround, particularly in the first half, and it's a good thing he's got reasonable pace, because he was being bailed out of a few situations of his own making, and so having him as the last line of defence is a little bit worrying as well. And obviously when O'Shea picked up the injury, Moyes still didn't want to bring Djilabodji on, and that probably tells you what you need to know about how much David Moyes would trust Djilabodji going into 10 minutes of 0-0 against Burnley. So, all in all, I think...
It's damning when you put it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a risk to leave O'Shea on, because he was hobbling, he didn't look comfortable, he looked like he couldn't pivot. Especially with O'Shea's age and his injury history, it was a risk. And, the international break might have come at a good time in that sense. Hopefully Kone will be back, and O'Shea won't be ruled out, because... a centre-back pairing of Djilabodji and Denea would have been interesting, to say the least. But yeah, just a disappointing game. Burnley looked quite solid. We looked like we might give them a chance any minute. They didn't really look like they would give us chances. When we had a chance, we maybe earned it a little bit. But their chances, we just looked like we were going to give them one, and we did right at the end. And obviously Pickford made a really good save. So
fantastic save.
Yeah, but just disappointing, really disappointing, and
interesting.
2 points dropped.
was going to say, interesting about Rodwell, though, because obviously I've been his biggest critic. I agree with Callum. I thought he played quite well.
He did.
But he had he did have a bit more impact, didn't he, in the middle of the park than he usually does. I think one thing I notice is I think the coaching staff and the manager in particular, they do a lot of encouraging when it comes to Jack Rodwell. I think that, when he does something good, you can see I think the teammates around him and the guys on the bench seem to make more of a deal of it. I think he's such a confidence player. Yeah, he's such a confidence player that he needs that.
Well, if they've tried everything else and that's all there is left to try with him, then why not?
Yeah.
What about you, Tom? Tom, what do you make of the match?
Pretty much agree with what was said. It was quite disappointing. It was the first time I've been to the stadium for a while. I don't get so many home games, but mainly do the away ones. But one of the most striking things walking into the ground of how dead it was. I mean, there's 40,000 people there, but it just felt so flat walking in. There was no kind of that anticipation of looking forward to a game. No matter what kind of run you're in, you usually have some kind of maybe today will be different. And then we got served up that 45 minutes of complete, utter boredom, and nothing really changed. Burnley are a team that sadly are just much better than us, and they've been in the Premier League 10 months. And it's striking that the contrast between their manager and ours. Dyche was I don't think he ever left his technical area, barking instructions, giving encouragement and all this, whereas Moyes, slinks back to his chair, sends out Stockdale or Bracewell. And Burnley towards the end looked like the only team that actually wanted to win it. I was in the northwest corner, so you're kind of online with the dugouts, down the line. And when Dyche brought on Vokes to give him the 4-4-2, so he's thinking, right, I want to win this now. And the first thing that Moyes did was send Gilabodji out to warm up. And as Callum mentioned, I wasn't really aware that John O'Shea was hobbling because of the other end of the pitch. But it just kind of struck me as, why aren't you making these substitutions? Why aren't we trying to win this game? You've got attackers on the bench. So why don't we try and win this game? Burnley don't really need to win this. If they lose this, then it's going to be disappointing for them, but it's not going to be a complete disaster. They've accumulated so many points that they'll be fine. It's why aren't we doing it? Why don't you just roll the dice? Yeah. If we get beat, you get beat, but at least you look like you tried. We tried to win it. And the only time, and then it got to about 75 minutes and we're saying, oh, well, I guess I must have to. Larson, again, for the millionth time this season, he just looks so done. And when the first substitution was, he brought off Gibson. Gibson, again, not great, but just take Larson off because he's dying out there. And all the fans know he's dying out there. He probably knows he's dying himself. And just to keep persisting with this player, it's just you feel sorry for him in a way because it's you're knackered. But he's just been made to do this stupid job. And then when we do put an attacker on, who he hates, he puts through a chance within about 30 seconds. Oh, it wasn't the right way to pass. But at least it looked like something that was an opening. And for the love of God, Billy Jones, oh, God. It just sums everything up. It's like James mentioned, it's unfortunate one of our chances didn't fall to Defoe. It's no, it shouldn't be just Defoe who can head a ball into a net. It can't, the other teams have more than one player who can score goals, and that's normally what keeps them up. We can't just have one player who scores goals. It has to be spread out. And how can you miss from 6 yards out the goal? Well, I know how you can because you're Billy Jones and you're crap. But yeah, it wasn't the end of the world, the result, but 7 points adrift now. I think start shutting up shop, lads, because we're going to Blackburn next year.
Well, yeah, you say, I mean, I completely agree with you on Larson. I think you summed it up there. He just looks done. He looks finished. Whatever he had, it looks like it's gone. I mean, as I've said before, the only thing that I really admire about Seb Larsson anymore is the little Macam twang that he has in his accent when he speaks. That he's just I don't know whether he puts it on or whether he's picked it up. But for me, and his gorgeous blue eyes as well. He's got those ice cold Nordic blues.
He's dreamy.
You got to love it. He's, straight out of Vikings. But no, if we're talking about the selection though. You were saying about Jack Rodwell earlier, James. Well,
yeah.
What about him?
Well, as I said, he was decent. Rodders. He's probably one of his better games. I mean, he didn't have a lot to do. I mean, I don't think Burnley have a great deal in the centre of midfield, so it wasn't like it's probably quite a comfortable game for him. But when you do have, it's quite a slow midfield, isn't it? When you've got Larsson, Gibson, and Rodwell. I mean, Larsson, as we've just covered, it obviously wasn't the best. He did actually provide a couple of moments of quality. I mean, the ball for Jones's miss was absolutely superb, and that was probably the best thing he's done all season. That was the Seb Larsson of old. Mm-hmm. It was a really decent ball, but he did miss. He also missed a really good chance from about 6 yards out, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
You think we just looked so much better when Ndong came on because he's so much faster. He's so much fitter. He's just quicker to the ball. And just that increased impetus just seemed to push us on a little bit. And you think, it beggars belief why he didn't start the game, really. I have no idea.
That's the critical thing. I mean, when he's been saying he doesn't have options, he's been saying he's light in midfield, and he's been, it's been like a broken record for months. And then, he's got Gibson, he's got Rodwell, he's got Larsson, and then he's got Ndong. Obviously, Rodwell's just come back, and you think, right, so now you've got Gibson, Rodwell, and Ndong, three central midfielders, three midfielders who that's their position, and they've never been wide men before. They've never been set piece specialists. They haven't been shoehorned into midfield when their legs have gone and they can't play properly on the wing. They are central midfielders, and so what does he do? He drops Ndong and continues with Larsson. You think, well, now you see you've had options and you've shown us that you've made the wrong choice, and that for me is the key part. Where first thing I thought when I saw that midfield, I thought no legs. There's no legs in that midfield at all. I mean, say what you like about Patrick Van Aanholt, but when he left, we lost a kind of the outlet that gets the ball quite deep and drives forward quite quickly. Oviedo hasn't really replaced that. Like I said, he misplaced a lot of passes yesterday. He was quite poor. He doesn't look as quick as I had heard he was, but
he's better defensively than Van Aanholt. I think that's for sure.
Yeah, defensively he was fine yesterday. I didn't really have any complaints, but because we've lost what Van Aanholt gave us in that sense, you'd think that Ndong sort of marauding. He's got a bit of energy. He can push forward. And win the ball back in advanced positions. Go on the front foot and press and put teams under pressure and win the ball higher up the pitch, like he did at Crystal Palace. One mistake, one loose touch, and he's on you. Whereas with the other three, I wouldn't say that's something that they can really offer. And so I thought it was just a negative choice, and it was a bizarre choice, particularly considering. I mean, our friend and colleague. Rory Fallow said on Twitter, he criticised Kazri and says he doesn't retain the ball enough. That's why he's not playing him. And then Ndong, who statistically has been one of our better passers and best retainers of the ball, is dropped. It smacks of a rather of a man who really is just frantically searching and doesn't really know what his best team is, but we're our next game's April. We're in April now, basically, and he still doesn't know his best team. I would submit that he's had long enough to be able to make the decision that Ndong would have been a better choice yesterday than Larsson. That seems to me to be quite a simple decision.
Yeah, it did. So you're right, because it did seem like he was almost rolling the dice. It's like, oh, please, this work. Maybe I'll stumble across something that'll finally will all click into place. When it just seemed to be just the wrong choice and another wrong choice. I don't know what's happened to Lyndon Gooch. I mean, where's he gone? I mean, he's surely he offers more than what Seb Larsson can offer. Just because we lack we lack pace. We really lack pace in that team.
It's not like he has any kind of argument for discounting youth when you consider some of the transfers he brought in.
Exactly right. I mean, the lack of
and Love and Dong himself, all young players.
Well, at the start of the season, he was spouting on about how he wanted to build this young, hungry team. And then he bought Pienaar, and then he won't stop playing Larson, even though every man and his dog can see that the lad's finished. I mean, I like Seb Larson. I think he's been quite good for us since Bruce bought him. But he's done. It's like I'm baffled as well about why Lyndon Gooch is not playing. At this point in the season, why not play him? I mean, how bad could he be? Like, how worse could it be? We're bottom of the league with 20 points. It's April and we've got 20 points. It's like, and he thinks we're going to win 5 more games. He thinks we're going to get 5 wins and 3 draws. No chance. Absolutely no chance.
Again, it leads you to wonder and question whether or not he truly believes that, doesn't it? Because, and I don't want to keep going back to this conspiracy theory, but we are going to actually do a sort of another bumper special for you next week, along these sort of lines, exploring these things while we've got the break, and since we're so close to the end anyway. But just as a brief taster, we've said before, when he came in, I mean, what was it, his second game day, and he was talking about relegation. Do you know what I mean? Right at the very beginning. I mean, fair enough, it would make sense for the media to throw him a question. Do you think you can do what these other managers have failed to do and stabilise the club? I would have expected a decent answer for that, and a straight answer. But even then, he was cagey about it. Even when he was questioned about what he was going to do, if he was going to bring the stability to the club that the fans were truly calling out for, and supposedly that Sunderland really needs, that's neither here nor there for me. Was he not still hesitant to say yes? I don't remember him ever once being confident. I don't remember him saying, we're going to do this. I don't remember him saying anything like that. I remember him saying specifically, like, well, I'll try. And that's what it is from him. But
it's not even like the first 2 games were catastrophically bad. I mean, the first game is an away game at Man City, which you write off anyway, let's be honest.
And we were good then.
We almost got a point.
And we almost got a point. So you think, right, well, that's not the end of the world. That's not got me feeling down in the dumps. And then the next game, fair enough, like Middlesbrough race into a 2-goal lead. In the second half, we have a bit of energy. We pull a goal back. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. It's 2-1 home loss. Like, it's not like we've been battered like 4-0 in both games. And he mentions relegation, and like, no one kind of mentions that. And sort of says the circumstances in which he said these things. Now it seems perfectly reasonable to say it, but back then, why would you?
Exactly,
that's the question.
That question exactly is my point. Like, is it not? Well, I won't say obvious, but is it not looking increasingly likely and more probable that his remit was never to keep us in this league? And he was never promised the sort of funding that would have been required to keep us in this league, and that would answer why he didn't have the sort of scouting network set up in both transfer windows to account for that, to push forward. I mean, we've said again, infamously now, about the whole Ulloa thing, that imagine turning Leonardo Ulloa into a transfer saga. Do you know what I mean? That's just ridiculous in itself. To the point where the bloke wants to come here, he wants to leave Leicester. I mean, he's not getting a look in now. He wants to leave Leicester to come to Sunderland, and then they turn you down for your flat out ridiculous fee of what, 10 million or something stupid like that it was supposed to be, and you have no one to back that up. You have no plan B. To me, that reeks of I'll try and get him if I can get him on the dirt cheap. Yeah,
not only that though, Ulloa's 30.
Exactly.
Is he?
Yeah.
What happened to this plan I was hearing about youth and like what we were saying about Gooch? I'd rather see what Lyndon Gooch can do in central midfield than
a 35-year-old Seb Larson.
Yeah, than Larson or Pienaar. Or I've seen we've even seen Donald Love pressed into service in central midfield this season. So what would be bad? I mean, George Honeyman as well. Roundly, it's said he's 23. He's out of contract at the end of the season. In all likelihood, he won't be playing his football with us next season. Why is he on the bench and Gooch isn't? Why? It genuinely baffles me how this plan is so inconsistent and so opaque, and it's inconsistently applied, and yet everyone keeps going on about it like this. It's this tangible thing that we know exactly what he's doing. Like, oh, well, at least we can see the building blocks. At least we can see what he's trying to do. I heard something at the beginning of the season about what he was trying to do, and since then, it's been a mishmash of I don't know what. That's what really bothers me, is people cling to this plan like it's their favourite toy, and don't sort of critically look at it and think, well, where is this plan?
This is it as well. And we're talking about that on that note. Like I've said in the notes, obviously, about this, but Sunderland fans, are we shamed by this? Do we shame each other by complaining, by not having this sort of stiff upper lip, get on with it, that's just your lot in life attitude? What would you make of that, Tom?
I can understand that point, because this is the thing. It's starting to split the supporters. I mean, I was in the pub after the match yesterday, and the bloke said to me, next to me, said they thought Moyes was going to go. I thought he was going to walk out or something, but he said I don't want him to. And I was like, why do you not want him to? So we can't just keep sacking managers. And it's like, that seems to be this. This is a very clever ploy by the club, by the way. It was as soon as he got appointed, we're saying, right, this is a guy, no matter what happens, here's 4 years, this is our guy now until we go bankrupt. And that was a very clever point. He said, we're going to stop sacking managers. So now, we are so bad, but he seems to have the safest job in English football. Even, for instance, Conte at Chelsea, he was nearly out on his arse at the beginning of the year because he'd lost about 4 games, and then he won 10 or whatever, the top of the league. But I would hazard a guess that David Moyes' job is more secure than Conte's, because the board has no appetite to sack this man. Why they give him 4 years is absolutely baffling. It shows faith or whatever, but you can't just be shy and just get rewarded with this thing. And people who do speak out are getting shot down because you're going against the club, you're not being a proper supporter, and we need to rally behind. And yet, it can get a bit tiresome, just pointing out his major flaws. But no one has come to me or just expressed any opinion of what has he done in the past, 10, or no, nearly a year, or whatever, give or take. When he's been here, what has he done to suggest that he could, A, keep us up, which he's not going to do, but why is he the man that is going to rebuild in the Championship? And this stupid argument of, oh, well, he did good at Everton. He did all this at Everton. Well, he didn't take Everton down to begin with, and we're talking 2004, 5. The game's moved
Probably
on.
Probably more like 2002.
Well, exactly. The game is so exponentially different now. The amount of money involved, just the level of tactics, and you have to be clever. You can't just go to the Championship or League One and buy all these players and hope they're good, because the players you buy for 40 pence back in 2002 now cost 12 million quid. So it's not just about buying these players. You have to think of a system, a style of football, and when we do go down, he's got about 8-9 players out of contracts, and then he's got to not only rebuild this team but also rebuild this fan base, because going to the match is not very nice. I mean, Saturday was not enjoyable, and what has he done? What in this past season? What has he done that says to me, "You're the guy who can do it. You could do this." Exactly.
Anything, has he? And Damo said before, he said interesting words. He said cagey. He's some of his answers in press conferences are cagey. Everything about him's bloody cagey. His tactics are cagey. He seems to be so intent on being safe and picking the safe option, or picking the experienced player instead of the youthful player, etc., etc. And his refusal to throw caution to the wind, it makes the game dull. That he needs to be more adventurous. He needs to throw caution to the wind. You look at
he sets up that shield by doing it as well, doesn't he?
He
by
does,
picking
exactly
the experience
right.
over that throwing caution to the wind.
And you look at when we say, for example, when we had Roy Keane, he was a manager who he did nothing but throw caution to the wind. But you saw the connection between the fans and the players and the club, and the amount of late goals we scored, and we just kind of crave something like that. I just don't get any belief. I get really frustrated because I get no belief from him whatsoever.
He strikes me as a man who he's sort of like a journeyman. He strikes me as someone who could jump from job to job quite happily for the next 10, 15, 20 years, never really achieving anything. Yeah, just on a wage packet. Do you know what I mean? Just doing that, and he's got this. I think we said before as well. Like I think, yeah. Well, we've been saying it pretty much every week, haven't we? But with regards to his pedigree or his supposed pedigree, his CV, basically, on whether he should have any kind of respect just because of that. Initially, perhaps, I shut down some Man U fans straight away when we signed him because I was thinking, well, you know what, maybe this is... I mean, we all were, weren't we? We were all sitting there thinking, well, he must have had a bad turn at Man U. I mean, they're quite entitled, aren't they? They're expecting a lot, big shoes to fill. Yeah. So, yeah, this is a good level for him. No, not at all. I think it is a great level for him. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for his bank balance. Do you know what I mean? Particularly, and as I say, all for me, it just reeks of knowing you're going to get relegated, buying for that relegation, not even this season, but the season following it. Do you know what I mean? And having this attitude of putting those shields up, saying, oh, well, I picked the experienced players, I picked the players I knew, I picked the players I could get in, I didn't have much money, my hands were tied, I was promised this, I didn't get it. I'm sick of hearing it, mate. I think we're all sick of hearing it.
It's this idea, though, that rescuing Everton 14 years ago, or whatever, 15 years ago, managing Man United is not at all relevant to managing Sunderland. I don't care if you've got Man United on your CV. I honestly don't. Like, people will say, oh, well, it's a prestigious, look, that's a successful, prestigious manager. Dick Advocaat won the UEFA Cup. Martin O'Neill has got Villa at 6th in the Premier League, so only a couple of years before he took over us. You know, we've had successful managers who have impressive CVs. And for me, David Moyes managing in Spain, managing Man United, doing this with Everton, and fans would rather look at that and say, you see, that's proof. Ignore what's going on now. Ignore the calamity of all the decisions he's making and the signings he's making. Ignore that. Look at the fact that he's a former Man United manager, David Moyes, Everton builder, David Moyes, and they sneer. A lot of our fans sneer and look at managers in the Championship and say, oh, well, they've never managed in the Premier League. They've never done this. They've never done that. And they'd rather have someone who's living off a reputation from 15 years ago than someone who's getting on with a job on a budget in the Championship and building a club down there. They'd rather say, oh, well, you know, that's not much. Getting, you know, like, I know it's a running joke in this chat that I'm like Gary Rowett's agent. But
you are Gary Rowett.
Yeah, I was going to say
I am Gary Rowett.
But it is a running joke, and I'll embrace it because to be honest, I think he did a really good job at Burton, did a really good job at Birmingham, and he did it on a shoestring. And you know, taking a club like Birmingham in the situation they were in, and the budget they've got, losing some key players, and taking them up to the top, like the top half of the table, and doing that job is not an easy job, and it is not, for me, it's not a job that you just sneer at and dismiss and say, but he's not good enough for us, and instead we'll take this guy who's living off past achievements and who's managed at Man United. For me, I know which one I'd rather have. I'd rather have the young one who's forging a career on a smaller budget, building a team and not complaining about it, than having some guy who was saying, oh, well, this isn't like it was at Everton, this isn't like it was at Man United. Well, no, it's not. But either work in these conditions and accept the conditions rather than making ridiculous decisions and then saying, oh, well, I had no choice, the conditions were impossible.
Absolutely.
You know, same maybe with like Paul Clement at Swansea.
Yeah.
Did a quite a good job at Derby. He got sacked really unfairly, and then they plummeted because they got someone, as you say, Callum, someone with a past reputation like McLaren, who absolutely bombed out again. And it's like, there is this kind of snobbery about the Championship. I think that's just in the Premier League in general. You saw when Marco Silva come in and it was like, oh, who the hell is this guy? This guy's going to keep Hull up. And same with Clement. And it's, and we've got, like, he's a has-been. He's a clearly very bitter about what happened at United, because that would have set him up for life. And when he went to Sociedad, he was, well, from what I've read and what I've heard or listened to, he was very arrogant in the way he didn't bother to try and learn Spanish. And then instead of surrounding himself with, like Spanish coaches who know the Spanish game, he went and got people like Billy McKinley in. I mean, I don't know Billy McKinley's nuances of the Spanish game, but I assume that the Spanish coaches know a bit more than Billy McKinley. And then, lo and behold, he was shite at Sociedad.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a... I mean, I sort of felt for him. As I say, I've said they were big shoes to fill. And when you consider that he was supposedly selected by Ferguson, arguably the greatest manager of his time, of our time, I can see why he would be bitter. But I agree with you. I think he does strike me as bitter. He strikes me as instantly defensive. The moment he walked through the door, before he walked through the door, he might as well have stuck some riot gear on to meet the fans, because he looked like we were just going to pelt him with pitchforks and rotten tomatoes and, do you know what I mean, and just a big bag of shit because he's David Moyes and we're Sunderland. That's his whole attitude. It's just.
But that pre-season friendly though, when he just joined and he's like walking out onto the pitch. And he's got and he's looking quite slim and quite healthy, and the sun's shining, and he's and he's he's walking out onto the pitch, and he's got his fist clenched, and the fans are like, "Yes, come on, this is going to be a good, come on." And
that was a mint moment. I thought, "Oh my God, we're going to do this! David Moyes is going to make us mint."
Statuesque.
Yeah, it is one of those moments that you thought, "Well, actually, he looks quite up for this." Oh well, because I was against disappointment from the beginning, but at that moment I didn't change my mind, but I thought, well, actually, he looks more up for it than I thought he would. But then his press conferences started, and now he's standing above a sign that says "Keep the Faith" as just like a constant reminder that he's doing a terrible job. Like if you've got to have a sign that says "Keep the Faith" above your head while you work, like for me that shows that you're doing a pretty shite job.
Yeah.
But that's just me,
It's like wearing your qualifications on a chain around your neck.
It's like
David, I'm qualified to do this.
Yeah, David, where are those spreadsheets? The deadline was at 9 o'clock this morning. Look, just read the sign, keep the faith, right?
Trust him.
I'll have it. Trust me. I did this 15 years ago. You'll find. just leave it with me. Leave it with me.
I think that's it. That's just everything in a nutshell. We could probably stop the show here with that.
Let's
shut up.
It's just to play devil's advocate. Let's try and think of, they look at his excuses, and when he came in, the way Allardyce left, we were all devastated, weren't we? Because obviously the buzz around the club at the end of last season was massive, and the way he left was just, even though he got his dream job, I mean, we were just devastated, and just we seem to have so much momentum. I fail to understand how you can, instead of building on that momentum, looking at the squad and thinking, right, this is what they did well last season. Let's, continue this, maybe add his own tweaks in there and change it over time. But he seemed to come in and just, with a bazooka and just try to change everything really, really quickly, brought in a lot of players and, made a lot of excuses. It's
an interesting point you raised there. It is an interesting point, because on that note, I'm wondering if it's a very, very not blurred, blurred line. It's a very fine line, certainly, to walk, isn't it? Coming in as a manager. I mean, even if you forget whatever CV you've got, which you'll obviously use personally to psych yourself up, because he's human. You know what I mean? He'll be nervous about the job, and he'll be nervous about walking into the dressing room.
Of course he will.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a fine line. So you go in there, and you've got all these lads, some of whom have been, they're hard nuts, you know what I mean? Some of them are young lads, some of them are taking the piss, some of them need help, some of them don't think you're anything, you know what I mean? They don't think you're worth shit on their shoe. That's just it's a melting pot of people. It's bound to happen. So it's also relevant to say that charisma and certainly charisma, mainly those overriding the capacity we have, the way we talk to people, persuasion. Do you know what I mean? Having an effect, an aura, even if you want to be dramatic about it. having an aura when you go into a room, it's important. It's important going into the dressing room for the first time. I mean, you must have all this baggage behind you. So what do? Do you go in and do you put your foot down straight away? Do you know what I mean? Is it like with a dog or with a school classroom? Do you know what I mean? Do you go in there and you show that you're going to rule with an iron fist or you're going to rule with a gentle hand? So is that the way it's going to be? So I can understand where he could go wrong so easily. I mean, first impressions in the dressing room of a Premier League football club must be worth so much more than they are in the outside world.
Massively. And you talk about aura, and then I know I hate to hark back to Roy Keane, but can you imagine the aura that man walked in with?
Oh yeah, exactly.
You know, everyone around the club would have
straight away would be like, you stop doing that, you stop doing that. You wouldn't have to do that because automatically he commands respect, doesn't he?
Yeah, everyone would have been like, fucking hell, that's Roy Keane, you know? I mean, I remember Jack Colback came out with something just saying, you know, I mean, the players were terrified not to perform because, you know, this guy just had that aura and that class about him. And, you know, and I think he said something about, you know, a lot of the players were like laughing and joking, and Roy Keane enters the room, and it's just, you know, if he fills the room, his personality, and you think, right, well, he's the boss. We're gonna get on here, and I just can't see David Moyes walking into a room with a bunch of 20-something lads or, you know, early 30s lads, you know, professional footballers, and command respect instantly.
In keeping with what I was saying about like an analogy of school children and it being a school classroom, he strikes me as the sort of, you know what I mean, the substitute teacher who's come in and he's concerned that he's going to get a lot of stick. So instantly, just, you know, he's an arsehole. You're never going to have a rapport with him. You're never going to get along with him. He's come in and he's shown that he's here to protect his job and to protect himself, which is
that's why he brought in all these shite
exactly.
mates.
And then he brings in all of his own. He brings in all of his
he's
boys
like,
to back
here's
him up
Stephen
in the dressing room.
Pina. He's going to talk.
I'm wondering now if Catamol's even still injured. I bet you he's been faking this the entire time. It's just like, I'm not going into that dressing room. I'm not sitting there listening to that shite. I can imagine it. I can absolutely imagine it, which is a real shame because we could use.
Yeah, I mean the thing is though, I've no doubt that it's a difficult job. You know, like keeping such big personalities and, you know, a lot of inflated egos in check at the same time, and, you know, making sure they're all or most of them are happy. It's a difficult job. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, football managers are very well remunerated at the top of their game for this job. It's not an easy job, but it's also not a job that you can say that they're not well paid for. So I think if he's not got the personality for it, if he's not got the charisma for it, then that's just tough. It's a ruthless business. You know, there's no friends in football. A lot of former professionals have said that. They've said, you know, there's only acquaintances in football. And so if he's not, I mean, from my point of view, the way I look at the team and how they play on the pitch, I just think they look like they're not being, like they don't really know how they're meant to play, how they're meant to attack. They don't know their jobs particularly well. You know, you look at the difference between us and Burnley. Burnley's players are what you would call an inexpensively assembled group of players who have had to really fight to get to this level. You know, they are here by the virtue of their own hard work. And if you look at the way that they played yesterday, they weren't spectacular. They broke the game up, but they knew their jobs and they didn't look like they were going to really make a mistake because they were so well drilled. And that's just the polar opposite. And I think after this much time, has he had enough time to impose a little bit of discipline, a little bit of identity, organisation, a little bit of confidence in the players to sort of go out and play a certain way and not give away cheap possession in their own final third and to make slack passes? I would say so, but you know, I suppose some people's expectations are just lower because they feel that he's been dealt a duff hand. I don't think it's the easiest hand to have been dealt, but I also don't think it's as bad a hand as to justify the performances and the sort of the lethargy that we've seen. And you know, so for me, if he's not good enough, he's not good enough. It doesn't really make a difference for me how long he's. You know, people say no, he hasn't had 4 years. You know, for me, he should have had an impact by now, and the fact that he hasn't is quite damning.
I mean, do you think obviously he wants to build? He wants to build something. How many of a backroom staff did he bring in? I mean, the fact that Bracewell's still there and Stockdale's still there. I mean, I would have thought he would have had someone he wanted to bring in to help get his message across, and
Yeah. Did he not try and bring? Is it Steve Round?
Oh, right.
I can't remember who it is. There was someone he tried to bring.
I don't think he did. Not Steve Round.
Like, why is Paul Bracewell seem to be so untouchable? He seems just as miserable at times. But he's been, I'd like to have seen him because it's been a while since Everton, and he's almost of a different footballing era now. It would have been nice to have seen him bring in someone young alongside him, someone younger and more dynamic to kind of work alongside him to get closer to the players.
Yeah, I thought Stockdale was going to be that week.
What's Paul Bracewell do? Seriously, what did he do apart from
crying in the shower?
Sit and look like your dad all game.
Well, this is it. I mean, yeah, fair enough. We've stuck enough of an axe in Moyes for today. Although arguably we could keep doing it. We could talk about this forever. But talking about who's to blame, I mean, the buck does have to stop somewhere else ultimately, doesn't it? Now, those seats that Ellis Short and his missus were sitting on looked mighty comfortable, didn't they? Because she managed to nod off in the middle of the sun. Now, this, I don't know if she was there. Well, I say I don't know. I know for a fact why Ellis Short was there and why he brought his missus. They were there to show some sort of solidarity. Do you know what I mean? Oh, we're here. Keep the faith. Unity is strength and all that crap. I'm positive that's why it was. Because it damn well wasn't to sack Moyes, sorry, which is what we were all hoping for. That was the buzz. Like, oh, Short's come to watch it. Oh, and Peter Reid's there. And he's talking to Kevin Ball. Are they going to sack Moyes? Do you know, how desperate are we that that's what's going through our heads? Do you know what I mean? This crazy conspiracy whereby Peter Reid and Kevin Ball are just like, you know what, we've had a word with Short and we're going to save the day. No, yeah, so talking about Ellis Short, which we will do more next week, more in depth about Ellis Short. Is it fair to say that now, after all this time, that he's just as much responsible as any player, any manager, or any bad beat we've taken as a team? What would you make of that, Callum?
Absolutely, he bears a significant role in and responsibility for what's been going on these last few years. He's surrounded himself with people and delegated responsibility to people who have made bad choices, who have advised him incorrectly. I think that to an extent, he has in a way admitted that he is not the fount of knowledge on football, and I know Roy Keane's made some accusations in the past about him trying to get a bit too involved and all that sort of stuff. But from what I've heard and seen, managers have been pretty autonomous, and other managers haven't really complained about him interfering. And like I said, he has delegated responsibility to people, and they've really let him down as well. In the way that they've managed the club, and obviously all the changes have led us to a position where he's put a lot of money in but hasn't really got a return, and he's probably just as irritated as a lot of fans are for having seen what his money's got him. But I think obviously if you are the guy who is at the top of the football club and you are the guy who's hiring the people who are making such a mess, then ultimately you have to shoulder a responsibility. And if the club is in the financial state it is, he is the owner. He has been the chairman for a few years now. He is ultimately the guy who has to look at the finances and think, well, do you know what? I'm as responsible for this as anyone. So absolutely. I mean, my point has never been that it is just David Moyes that's wrong, and if we got rid of him, everything would be fine. My point is that I think David Moyes escaped quite a lot of criticism that's due his way, and there's plenty of blame to go around.
Well, I mean, what you just said about Short, I can't agree with the. I mean, you're as you say, you're just speculating as to how he feels.
Yes.
Like, with regards to whether he's sitting there and thinking, oh, he's not making any money. Do you know what I mean? Does he sort of suffer as a result of a lack of return on his investment? For me, I'm not going to feel sorry for some rich kid who doesn't know how to play with his toys properly and breaks them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's how I feel.
Oh, no, I understand, yeah.
Because this guy's a multi-billionaire. Yeah, and it doesn't mean anything to him. I mean, we'll touch on this next week. We've already discussed it before. There is the loan. There's a massive amount of money that we actually owe Ellis Short. He's taken out large loans, but he also owns multiple different companies, and some of those loans are from some of those companies, from what we can see. And a lot of that money is due back to him. So, with regards to whether or not we should back him, I mean, I personally don't like that view anyway, that Ellis Short sunk money into the club and we should be grateful for that. No, that's not my problem. It's got nothing to do with kindness or any kind of connection to the club or the fans, the city. It's nothing to do with that. Everything that he does is business motivated. He's not a footballing man. He doesn't understand football managers. He doesn't understand football players. He doesn't seem to. He certainly hasn't. I mean, I'm not going to blame him entirely for Sunderland not being the most touristy hotspot in the world, or a global location of culture or marketing or anything like that. But certainly, our marketability hasn't really skyrocketed. Do you know what I mean? There's no plan. It's whether if he was just, to me, it strikes me that he bought a club because he could. Do you know what I mean? And Sunderland must have been on the lower scale of that, of the amount of money you'd have to pay for a club. And yeah, to the right investor, Sunderland is a great club. It's a fantastic opportunity, really, to the right investor. I don't think he is the right investor. But beyond that, he's in a bit. I mean, we saw it before when Moyes was brought in, and that comment that he made, whether it was a scathing in passing, particularly to Sam Allardyce, whether it was just a shot from the bow for that, you know what I mean, like a parting message of, oh well, he's the manager I've wanted for the last 5 appointments. Well, to me, that just tells me that you haven't got a fucking clue what you're doing. So what? It's taken you 5 times to get this right. Over this amount of time, it's taken you 5 attempts to get to the point where you've got the man that you want, and then now
got it wrong.
It turns out he's not the man that anybody wants. We're desperate to get rid of him.
I think he was really. I think that was just like he was really pissed off that he lost Allardyce. I don't think that had been an issue had Allardyce not got the England job, would not been. I think it's just one of those when you get dumped and you want to send like something really spiteful. It's you missus is much better than you, or whatever.
It was one in the eye for Allardyce. That was all it was.
Oh yeah. I want to just quickly defend Mrs. Ellis Short, who was seen having a bit of a kip at the match. I mean, I don't know if you partake in a lot of pre-match drinking as I do from time to time, but sometimes that first half was pretty boring, and those seats are quite nice, and you get a bit tired. You've had a bit of scrum before the match, so yeah, I can't really blame her on that front.
Fair enough. I mean, she was probably confident that she could have nodded off for like a good 20-30 minutes and nothing would happen.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? And she's proved herself right, really. Well, as I say, I don't want to stay too long on Short, but what would you make of his contributions to the club? Ultimately, what do you feel that he's brought to us, James, as our overlord?
Overlord.
Yeah.
Well, let's be honest. If we try and look at it objectively, I think he has tried to do the right things. I think at times he's made a hell of a lot of wrong decisions, but I do think he's probably has had the best wishes of the club at heart. Especially during the start of his tenure. I think the fact that he's not surrounded himself by footballing people on the board is a massive mistake. I think as soon as Niall Quinn left, I think we lost a really vital link between the pitch and the boardroom. I think the fact that he hasn't surrounded himself by football people, it kind of shows when he's tried multiple approaches. I mean, we had this Udinese model that went tits up, and then we brought in Congreton, and we had a whole new director of football model, and that went tits up. And it does stem as someone who has almost read a book on how a football club should run and said, "Oh, let's try their approach. Oh shit, that's not worked. Oh, well, let's try their approach. Oh shit, that's not worked." Rather than finding our own approach and our own ethic and our own way of building a club. He has a duty of care as the owner of this football club, and I think he's neglected that in the last, say, 12 months. I think before then he's put a lot of money in, and I think we could have had worse owners. I think he's massively to blame at the moment. I'd like to know how much money he did offer, Moyes in the summer and in January, because he must know, as I said, he has a duty of care, and he must know that without spending money in the transfer window, we're going to go down, and he clearly didn't make enough available. Shit rolls down the hill, doesn't it? So he's at the top. The buck has to stop with him. Moyes has been a bit of a disaster, but I do
as
think,
you say, it rolls downhill. So
exactly
whether
right.
the buck stops with him or not, it doesn't really, does it? 'Cause at the end, he'll get to walk away, and it'll just be some hazy memory to him.
Oh well, in the end, they'll all get to walk away. The Moyes will get to walk away.
It's only us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're left here to die.
Yeah. We'll get to sit and continue to watch and people who have ultimately not achieved what they probably should have done for the club get to walk away and that's football, really. We've had footballers and managers who've been here and not done as well as they should, and then they go and they get other jobs, they get other clubs, they get jobs in the media, they do very nicely, and that's football nowadays. As I said, I echo what Jim said, that I think he seems to have an affection for the club that a lot of chairmen maybe don't have. He seems to genuinely kind of, especially in earlier days, to kind of have that passion. I mean, when we stayed up at Arsenal, for example, and he was in the stands, he, obviously people will say there's that's the financial side of it. He's happy because we're staying in the Premier League and all that sort of stuff. But you see, if you've heard I've heard a few stories. You hear a few things that he's genuinely kind of invested in the idea of Sunderland Football Club and what that means on an emotional kind of pure level. Obviously, it's bound to be tainted by involvement in and interests in the ultimate financial prosperity of the club. So yes, I agree. I don't feel sorry. I don't lose sleep at night worrying about him. But I think that he's ultimately made a few decisions of who to trust, who to allow to rebuild, and they've not repaid his trust. And he's also made, and because he's hired those people, obviously that was the incorrect decision, and so he's got to shoulder the blame for that too. So,
Christ almighty, man! I'd hate to have you as a parent telling me off. Do you know what I mean? Like, ultimately, you've done wrong, so I'm not going to punish you now. I'm not going to tell you off too much, but, you sit in the corner and think about what you've done, little Ellis.
I'm not mad.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, okay? I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but you have shattered my favourite toy, so... Right, fair enough. Well, that's all we've got time for. Join us again next week. Thanks for joining us now. As I say, next week we'll have a bit of a bumper show again. During the international break, and that'll give us all a little bit more time to breathe and worry, and although we won't be losing sleep over Ellis Short, the owner, we will be continuing to lose sleep over whether or not his club can do anything, whether we can go any further than that. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Don't forget you can subscribe on iTunes and the Acast app. This is the Roker Report signing off.